I was too young to really remember the Springbok tour. I was just a littly. But you know how sometimes you don't know if you've got a memory or you can remember the story being told 10 years ago about the thing, but you don't know whether it's your memory or one from, I can't remember, but I have this memory, whether it's my memory or hearing the story about it 5 years later, of going to Eden Park and seeing the barbed wire around the field.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I think it was the weekend before for the Auckland game, because my dad took us, like from when I was basically old enough to walk, I was going to watch rugby. So I took us to the Auckland game, and I think it was the weekend before the test match. Didn't go to the test match because I was tiny. But yeah, as I said, I don't know whether that's an actual memory or whether I just heard my dad talking about it in 1995 or whatever, and I've kind of put it in there. But yeah, there you go.
I mean, I was born in 1980, so I obviously have no recollection.
You've been getting around for a year. You must have something. Surely something. Don't remember the flower bombs?
Yeah.
No.
Like, so my first, I guess, memories of being aware or being told about the Springbok tours probably happened in my pre-teens, maybe. Yeah. And just absolutely being blown away by a couple of things that people cared so much about something that was happening so far away, and learning at that time what apartheid was, and just my instant reaction is essentially a child going, "That's fucking not fair," and being really. One of the things that ADD kids have is a really inflamed sense of right and wrong.
Oh, really?
And I remember that being a real lightning rod of just going straight through my brain of like, well, none of that's right, none of that's fair. And so to see people here going, well, we're going to hit them where it hurts in the rugbies. I thought was incredible, and I remember for the first time seeing footage of what you were talking about.
Yeah,
actually, it would have been around the 10th anniversary of it, so that's when I would have seen it, like a retrospective sort of thing of someone actually flower bombing the game. And
I think that was Eden Park. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah. I'm thoroughly for that. And just. You know, the 80s for New Zealand protests, like you had the anti-nuke protests, you had people going to Moroa in the early 90s and that sort of stuff. I guess that was the first start for me of like, oh, okay, so if someone's not listening to you, you don't have to put up with it.
Yeah.
Like if the government doesn't seem phased on something, or they go against, like if you get enough people together, you stand up for what you believe in and you can push further. And I think as a preteen or a young teenager going, oh, I'm going to remember this. This may become important later on.
It's funny you mentioned 10 years later, because that's what it feels like when my dad was talking about it. Maybe there was like a 10-year cooling off period. Maybe like people who did, they talked about it was the issue that split the country into, you know, in families, there was fights over the dining room table. I don't have any recollection of that at all, but maybe it was 10 years later, because that's what I'm saying to you. Like I can remember, you know, being in my early teens and having my dad maybe talking about it. And so whether that memory is there. I'll tell you what though, it's funny you would talk about apartheid. Well, this would be an interesting conversation one night for people who are of the age, or maybe they don't have to be, because as you say, you can learn about it. But my big recollection of understanding about apartheid, it's a very clear memory. You know, sometimes you've got very clear memories. Like when Aramwana happened, I have a very clear memory of turning the news on and seeing Judy Bailey with big red eyes, because they'd been watching the feed and she'd been crying. So that was my memory of Aramwana, as Judy Bailey's stained eyes on the news. But my one for apartheid was I can remember and I can remember the picture of the girl, and I can remember the accent, and I'm going to do the accent even if and I'm going to say something really offensive, right? But this is why probably it stuck in my mind. It was just after apartheid had been, or was in the throes of just being turned over, and it was on the Paul Holmes show, which used to be on at 7 p.m. on TV1, where Hilary Barry's show is now with Newsboy. and they were in South Africa, and they had a camera on this, I'm going to call her a teenage girl, but maybe she was 25. And they asked her the question, how would you feel, like next weekend when this gets overturned, about having black people at the pool? And she went like this. And I'm apologizing because it's horrible. She went, no, they're just so dirty. And that was her response to having black people in the pool the following weekend. And that's my, like, if you ask me what's my one thing about apartheid South Africa, it's actually that's the thing that's strongest of all. I was too young. When Māori All Blacks went there one year, they gave them honorary white titles.
Oh yeah,
they were honorary whites. None of that. That's all well before my time. So that probably would have been early to mid 90s, maybe that happened. So that's for me as well.
You've triggered another member berry there.
Okay.
As I remember being in history class and apartheid being discussed, and our history teacher had spent some time in South Africa,
right?
And he was talking about a big project that the apartheid government at the time was wanting to do. They were wanting to build some big power plants, and they needed some engineers, and of course they were under all of these sanctions, and a lot of countries weren't going to help them with that and that sort of thing. But one of the countries that was going to help was, I believe, India. Yep, we've got some engineers. We'll be happy to help. So that put the apartheid government in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah,
because they really needed the expertise. But it was very clear that these people weren't white.
Yeah, didn't want the melanin.
So where does it fit in our structure of rights based on color? And that's where they came up with the idea, the absolute big brain idea that all racists have from time to time, that they're honorary whites.
Yeah.
And I remember my history teacher explaining this and going, if that's the hoop you have to jump through, then surely that shows that this regime that you've built, the structure that you've built, is just built on lies. Like, if that's what you have to do. So yeah, I mean, I maybe that's why I look at Israel essentially doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I go, like, this hasn't even been a question for me about who's the good guy and who's the worst guy in this. And why I find it so laughable when people go, oh, well, if you're against Israel, you're anti-Semitic or you don't like Jews. No, absolutely not. A big part of my life is looking at history and World War II history. I couldn't get there, even if I tried. To go, oh, well, this is a Jewish thing. It's not. It's an Israeli thing. It's a Zionist thing. Those two things, not every Jew is a Zionist. Not every Jew is an Israeli. So that's really clear to me. So why I find people get hung up on that and can't break those things apart. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy. I don't understand why people don't get it.
Yeah. I'll tell you one other thing that you've prompted, from me prompting, from you prompting, from John prompting. When I worked in Talkback, I was kind of doing fill-in work in the early part of the 2000s. I finished working for ZB about 2011, 2012, something like that. And I asked this question numerous times for a Talkback caller, and I don't think I ever got a call about it. And I think now back on it, and I kind of go, So I think 2005. So that's, say, 12, 13, 14 years after apartheid. And if you don't know this, Auckland is full of South Africans, especially the North Shore of Auckland. Huge population of South Africans. And every now and again, I'd try and do this topic. I'd go, if you grew up under apartheid South Africa, I really want to know what that transition was like for you. So you imagine, say, being born in 1962. So you're 30 at the end of apartheid. And then when I'm asking that question, you're 45. And I'm not saying I wasn't going, oh, that must have been so hard. I'm like, what if you've spent your life being told this one thing, and then you get told that's wrong and it's the opposite. How did that go? Like imagine if you were 60 in 1992. So when this talkback caller is asking you you're 75 or 73, it's like 80% of your life you've grown up under apartheid South Africa. And I probably did it, I don't know, 10 times, never once had a call. Never once. And I look back on that now and I kind of go, yeah, maybe that's quite a hard thing to reflect on. And maybe that's why I never once heard from someone to explain what it was like all of a sudden to be that girl and be in the pool the following week with black people.